It seems like all central banks around the world are tightening their wallets, and today a major powerhouse shifted its policy. So what does this mean for this country, and what does it mean for world economy, and most importantly, what does this mean for Bitcoin and crypto? The country that I am referring to is Japan, and yesterday it was reported that Bank of Japan, after being dovish for many years, decided they need to kind of tighten their wallets and not spend as much. So unlike the Fed or the ECB, how Bank of Japan manipulates their inflation or their economic activity is basically through their 10-year bond. Rather than mess with like a Fed fund rate or a fund rate in general, they keep on buying their 10-year bond. And they've been keeping that at an ultra low interest rate. So basically, that's their way of affecting economic activity, making sure that people or businesses in general can still borrow and borrow basically at a 0% interest rate. But it was really like 0.5%. After being dovish for so long, they no longer want to be dovish. And that's because they spend an enormous amount of money buying bonds to make sure that theirs come in between 0 and 0.5%, okay? And it's not just their own that they're buying bonds from every country on the planet. Yesterday it was announced that today they were going to tweak it, and they did. So rather than keep it at between 0 and 0.5%, they're going to keep it between 0.5 and 1%. So they softened that stand a little bit. And also, or I should say deflation, my bad. Deflation, not disinflation. Now, people thought, economy around the world, the economists thought that this would be much worse than it is, I believe. Or maybe it's a wait and see moment, because if you're looking at a U.S. market, right now it's pretty green in a futures market. Okay, I'm recording this early before market bells, but right now it's looking pretty good. There isn't a whole lot of fear from the U.S. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see and what this brings. Now, I did mention other central banks like the Fed. Okay, the Fed now thinks that recession is off the table. Okay, let's be clear, we are in recession. Okay, the true definition is to have two GDP quarters that are declining. Okay, and we had that. We're definitely in recession. So I don't know the true definition that Powell and the Fed is using, but nevertheless, the most fearful, I guess, scenario from the Fed is off the table. And that's because the U.S. economy is so strong. Even with the Fed fund rate at 5.25% now, economic growth is still robust in the U.S. That just shows how strong the U.S. economy is. And you know what? The ECB is also, starting to follow suit too. I mean, it does seem like in the Eurozone, inflation is still a little bit high, so they may have to do one or two more hikes. But overall, they're also paying attention to what the Fed is doing and what Bank of Japan is doing, right? But I would say central banks around the world are definitely tightening their spending. They're closing up their wallets, right? They don't want to disrupt, I guess, the current path of things. Inflation is coming down. Supply chain stuff is getting better, right? Energy costs are coming down. They don't want to really mess with that. And also, they definitely don't want to see inflation go too high, but also they don't want to see deflation. They want to see a little disinflation. And there's a difference between disinflation and deflation. So that's what it seems like. So with all this said, what does that have to do with Bitcoin, right? Obviously, Bitcoin has been stagnant for a while now. We have not been able to break 30,000. And I do think it's just a matter of time. I think there are a lot of people paying attention to all the stuff that I've been saying on a macro scale, right? Afraid to put their money in. But that may change. We know with Bitcoin, it always does. It always finds a way to break out, move forward, and onwards. And you know what? That may happen even today. of course, is the last Friday of July. The last Friday of every month, that's when you have a huge options and futures expiration. Okay, a lot of traders play with futures and options, and you have a ton. Just with options alone, 2 billion in overall volume. I don't know how much in futures, but there's just a lot. And sometimes we see volatility. Sometimes we see these prices be like a ceiling for where Bitcoin could go. Sometimes there's a max pain. I mean, there's a lot of phenomenon that happens. But sometimes when expirations happen, right, it's like the ceiling is removed and then everything starts moving forward, right, and upwards in this case. So that may happen as soon as today. And if you take into account that we have not seen this low of volatility for Bitcoin since 2016, we know an explosive move is going to happen. There are a lot of metrics and bands that show that we are in a squeeze right now. Volatility is super, super low. And whenever that happens, a big move is around the corner. And because we are in the new bull market, we're no longer in crypto winter, I believe that move is to the upside. All right, and that could be coming later today. And also, if you're looking at fundamentals, has never been better. Just look at this. Percent supply last active for 2 years, all-time high at 56%. Over 56%. That's a lot of Bitcoins being held by long-term holders. Okay, and supply held by shrimps, who are people that have less than 1 Bitcoin, continues to go upwards, okay? There's roughly 1,100 Bitcoins being bought per day, while only 900 are being produced. Do the math. That's a net positive, right? That's why Bitcoin is scarce. Scarcest asset that we have, and eventually one day, it's going to run out. But right now, glad to see that retail investors are still buying, and more importantly, institutional investors are buying as well. So both are buying in massive quantities, and we will see effect of the buying soon enough. Okay. And speaking of a halving event, right? We know it's coming up, but according to plan, we are recovering from bottom. We have recovered roughly around 80% right now, but who knows? By the time halving event hits, are we going to be around 150% or 200% like this last cycle, or maybe even higher? And then after that, how high Bitcoin will go, we don't know at this point, but wherever it lands, it will be tremendous. Tremendous, tremendous, tremendous.